everybody, welcome to the show. Run the Nation right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got a good Thursday show for you guys today. Yes, we will talk a little bit about the shooting and a couple of the stories. Interesting stuff, actually, breaking that I don't actually have a story about, but nonetheless interesting, who the shooter apparently palled around with. That's just an interesting tidbit. I'll probably throw into one of the stories that I have. But we got a couple of stories, like I said. We'll talk about the Trump budget and what it specifically does to the background check system. I think that's appropriate. We have a Florida lawmaker that basically tells the truth about the Republicans and their priorities on guns. And this is coming from a Republican, so I think you'll enjoy that story as well. Then we go switch gears. We're going to talk about White House dysfunction. Reince Priebus. Yeah, he is back. In a way. Then we go to something that the viewers, you guys sent in. We'll be talking again about ranked choice voting and what's going on in Maine. I think that's a great story. And then for the last couple of stories, it's been a bit of a tough week so far. So we got a couple of great news stories, some actual good stuff going on. That I think you'll be appreciative of. We got one including a TV station and what they did for some of their viewers. It's awesome. And then a study on weed that you're going to love. Absolutely love. So that's the show today. As I said, we got plenty of interesting stuff to talk about. So we'll get into it. And actually, yeah. We'll start. Okay. Okay. Now, President Trump's budget, which was released on Monday, is filled with lots of things, lots of terrible things. They're cutting. In fact, it's filled with the cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, the NOAA. Yes, they even cut the NOAA, which, of course, looks at climate change. So, no, we're going to cut that. Not only that, but we're going to cut food stamps and replace half of the benefits with a food box from the government. Fantastic. Among many, many other disastrous cuts. But what was missed in a lot of the reporting, including ours, to be fair, is something that now, after the Parkland shooting in Florida that happened yesterday, is now pretty relevant. Now, Huffington Post reports that buried deep into the 719th page of the Trump budget, you think Donald Trump actually read this at all? No. The document calls for massive cuts to the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Now, that's a system where gun buyers, federally licensed gun buyers, verify if somebody is able to buy a gun or not. Well, look, we already have problems with that system, right? The system is not perfect. There's a lot of people that actually fall through the cracks, right? And there are different ways to get around it and things like that. But hey, look, at least it's something, and at least it's effective. I mean, in fact, according to the Brady Center on Gun Violence, they found that background checks have stopped 3 million guns from being sold to people who otherwise would not be able to, purchase them. Well, they're not able to purchase them because of things like criminal backgrounds and things like that. So it stopped 3 million people. So it works to an extent, right? And that's great. Now, Trump wants to cut the budget to that. According to the article, the president calls for cuts to the National Criminal Records History Improvement Program and the NICS Act Record Improvement Program, which both provide federal grants to states that help them improve the reporting of criminal records and protection orders to the national database for background checks. That includes domestic violence records. So, hey, let's cut funding to these programs, because who cares about people with histories of domestic violence getting their hands on guns? That's not our problem. What you want us to actually try to protect you? No. Our thing is that we take your money and we give it in the form of tax cuts to the rich. That's our job. We're just a middleman. At least under Trump, that is what the government has turned into, taking your tax money and giving it to the rich. Wonderful. Hey, man, if you end up getting shot by a jilted lover, because our background check system, since we defunded it, will not catch that person trying to purchase a gun through a federally licensed arms dealer, sad day for you. Okay. Now, the two programs. And look, you're going to be shocked, right, at how little this is actually funded. And yet they're still targeting it to take money away from it. These two programs are currently funded at a whopping $73 million. Trump's proposal would slash their funding to about $61 million, which amounts to about a 16% cut. So let's target this program with this little amount of money while giving billions of dollars to the defense contractors in the budget. Hundreds of billions of dollars. So basically anything that might help keep people safe or might actually help people live, and anything that helps that helps regular people, we're going to cut it. We're going to slash it. And we're going to give more money to the military, which doesn't need it. And we're going to give money to the rich and corporations who also don't need it. They have all the money. But, of course, the reason that they do this is because, again, they don't care about you, right? See, these rich people, they live in their gated communities. They got bodyguards. They don't care. Who cares about the plight of the regular person? No, let's cut these programs. And in response to now the people feeling super unsafe, well, let's just instruct them to buy more guns. They can shoot each other all day. That is not going to affect us at all. The people behind their gated communities can sit there and watch. It'll be the new Hunger Games. Almost literally. And look, the reason that they don't care is because, again, it doesn't affect them. And also, they take money from the NRA and the gun manufacturers. In fact, the NRA spent $30 million helping Trump get elected. They bought your politicians. They bought them all. But don't worry. Whenever something like this happens, they've got plenty of thoughts and prayers for you. But nothing else. Look, it's February, and we've already had 30 mass shootings, most of which I hadn't even heard of. It has become so commonplace. We have had 18 school shootings. That averages out to a school shooting happening every 2.5 days. Oh, but please cut the background check system that is already overwhelmingly popular with the American people. In fact, most people want to see an expansion of the federal background check system. Donald Trump and the Republicans, they do not represent you. What they do is that they represent the most powerful special interest in America, the weapons manufacturers, the people who make the guns. The more guns they sell, the more profit they make. They are a profit-making machine. They're a corporation, of course. And look, if you end up dying from other products that is designed to kill, well, sad day. It's being used as intended. The point is here for these companies to make more and more profit. And if you happen to get in the way of that, sad day. Again, we'll crush you. We'll crush you, your family, your kids, all in the pursuit of more and more profit. Because that's what it's about. And it's never been more clear than the fact that in the face of another deadly school shooting, Republicans have instinctively protected their donors from the people who are calling for modest gun reforms, just like they always do. Instead of calling for solutions, and yes, no solution is 100% effective, but even modest solutions like increased background checks. No, instead of actually calling for that, Republicans protect their donors, and Trump in his budget had already called for a decrease in the funding for background checks. Our country is sick. Our system is sick. And I believe that it's the money that continues to allow this sickness to continue and to fester. Got to get the money out of politics. It may literally save your life. Okay. We move from one piece of insanity to the other. Okay. A former GOP representative has a message for older people who are tired of all these mass shootings. Stop voting for Republicans. Watch.
Let's be brutally honest about what we do know, and I say this as a Republican. Republicans will never do anything on gun control. Consider last summer you had Republican members of Congress shot and nearly killed during a softball practice, and they did nothing. After the Pulse nightclub, Democrats had a sit-in in the House. Republicans did nothing. After Vegas, hundreds injured, over 50 killed. Republicans did nothing. The idea of gun policy in the Republican Party is to try to get a speaking slot at the NRA and prove to that constituency that you're further right than generations past of Republicans have been on guns. And there's a disconnect with the American people and the heartbreak of the American people tonight. And so if this is the issue that defines your ideology as a voter, there are two things I would suggest tonight. First, flip the House. Flip the House. Republicans are not going to do a single thing after this shooting we saw today. But I would also offer to Democrats, work for incremental wins. And what I mean by that is this. We can do comprehensive universal background checks, and we can do it with the support of the law enforcement community, which typically is a conservative Second Amendment group. The law enforcement community wants universal background checks. They want greater restrictions on assault rifles. Democrats should go to the law enforcement community and say, we're going to leave the Republicans behind. Let's work on this together right now and get the will of the American people to be enacted in the United States Congress.
Look, man, so at this point, I'm willing to go with whatever on that solution. And I think most people also are willing to go with something, some sort of action. So, yeah, if you want to work with law enforcement groups, whatever, to try and get more federal background checks, I am not against that. I'm not against that. But so this is, but what's important here is that, again, you've got a Republican here, an ex-Republican lawmaker saying that this is the truth. The Republican Party is so entrenched in the money that they receive from the NRA and the tiny fraction of people that continue to vote for Republicans that are insane with their so-called gun rights, right? I mean, he says, look, Republicans, they're never going to do anything. I know, I'm a Republican. All my colleagues do is that they serve the donors and they pander to the far-right idiots that think that more guns is going to solve the gun problem. That's a pretty clear denunciation of the Republican plan. Look, these people receive millions of dollars in campaign bribes. Let me give you an example. Marco Rubio's out there talking about, oh, you know, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. That's the thing that they always say, thoughts and prayers. We're going to give you more thoughts and prayers. When your thoughts and prayers haven't done jack shit. So spare me your fucking thoughts and prayers. Anyway, so now immediately he goes on Fox News right after the shooting and says, well, there's no law that could have prevented this. None that we know of. Why don't we wait for the facts to come out? You know how much money Marco Rubio, talking about facts, how much money Marco Rubio received from the NRA during his career? He's gotten $3.3 million in legalized bribes. You think he gives a shit? Absolutely not. Maybe he does in his own weird way. I don't know. But he's so blinded by the money. They're all blinded by the money. Look, they didn't even consider doing anything. And Jolly mentioned this as well. They didn't consider doing anything after one of their own was shot, Steve Scalise. Steve Scalise, shot by some crazy guy, right, who had a gun during a baseball game. And what did the Republicans do? Nothing you can do. It's the price of freedom. It's the price of freedom. Well, I don't want to pay your price. I don't care about your, I don't care about your freedom to have whatever weapon that you want. I care about Americans' freedoms to live, to actually not have to go out in fear getting shot. And we have an epidemic right now, okay? Again, on average, we have a school shooting in 2018 of over one every 2.5 days. And you got most Republicans out here that are instinctively protecting the NRA. Why do they do that? It's because they're in love with the money. They're in love with the money. They're not going to do a single thing that we're in charge, even if it threatens one of their own. Yeah, sad day. Hey, maybe I'll get your part of the NRA money. It's sick, 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 sick. And look, they're not going to do a single thing now that they're in charge. President Trump's like, oh no, we're going to look into gun violence. Jeff Sessions, don't worry, we're going to offer solutions. You know what their solutions are going to be? More guns. I call it right now, more guns. Because that's what their donors want. And even when they weren't in charge, by the way, they blocked, they stalled, they filibustered, they killed any sort of bill that would expand background checks or stop anybody who shouldn't have a gun to be able to get a gun. Again, that's what their donors want, right? It's because the gun industry is an industry of death. Their products are designed to kill people. And look, these corporations, these gun manufacturers, they're a company. They're held to their they're held by their shareholders. What do the shareholders want? They want more profit. They want more of a bottom line. They're a machine. And their product literally has one purpose, and that is to kill things. And so it doesn't matter if the things that they kill end up being your kids or your friends or you. Doesn't matter because we got to pursue that bottom line. Profit over everything. They've got no other purpose. And the guns have no other purpose than to kill things. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we should actually try to make sure that at the very least these guns don't end up in the wrong hands. But Republicans are never, ever going to be in favor of that. If you give a crap about this issue, don't vote for Republicans, man. They're not on your side. I have a lot of problems with the Democrats. But on this issue, at least most of them, and I say most of them, and there are some of them that have great ratings, have received money from the gun industry as well. Joe Manchin is one of them. A lot of the centrist corporate Democrats in pro-gun states, they take a lot of money from the gun industry. But for the most part, at least Democrats are a little bit stronger on this issue. Because the Republicans, as long as that money keeps pouring in, they will never be on your side. So we got to do something about it. At least we got to get rid of these Republicans, or else nothing is ever going to change, and we're going to continue to see people gunned down in their schools, in nightclubs, everywhere, out on the street, and they won't do anything about it. Okay. Let's switch gears. Now, former Trump Chief of Staff Reince Priebus has opened up about the dysfunction that he experienced in the White House while he was there. Now, this is detailed in another new book called The Gatekeepers, How the White House Chiefs of Staff Define Every Presidency. So this book's coming out, and according to excerpts from the book, apparently the White House was even more chaotic than even we knew. And believe me, thanks to the leaks, we knew a lot. So now, for example, we knew that Steve Bannon could just walk in and lay a Breitbart article right in front of Trump and he'd read it. Well, some of it. Anyway, he'd probably read the headline and get enough from it. And that dictated his policy positions. Insane. Well, now we already know that Fox News also dictates policy positions, so I guess it really hasn't changed all that much. We also know that Omarosa could also go in and bring the latest, for example, article or video from Morning Joe and fire up Donald Trump that way. So that he'll sit there and tweet angrily about it for the next 2 hours. It was pure chaos. People going in and out of the president's office at all times, all hours, people calling the president, on and on, right? There was no order. Now, John Kelly, of course, he came in and he changed that. Now, I have an issue with John Kelly, of course, him being a massive right-winger, not a great person. But he did bring some order, and he at least made sure that there were facts that were going on President Trump's desk. Before the times of John Kelly, during the time of Reince Priebus, ain't nothing but bullshit ended up on Trump's desk, and we knew that, right? Not only that, but interestingly enough, look, the White House has been after leakers. Oh my God, we gotta go after the leakers, until they found out that Donald Trump himself is the leaker. He's a guy who would call up his friends and be like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what just happened today. You wouldn't believe what I just said to this guy. I mean, again, insanity. And this was all happening while Spicer was hiding in the bushes. Kellyanne Conway was, talking about alternative facts, and all everything else was just a mess. And yet somehow it's even worse than we knew, which is insane. In fact, Priebus had a quote on this. He said, take everything you've heard and multiply it by 50. That would be the level of dysfunction that we're dealing with. Jesus, man. Now, one particular instance that was pointed out that is actually verified is the near resignation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Didn't just happen once, happened twice, right? Now, Priebus, when he found out that Sessions was going to leave, he said, no, you cannot resign. It's not possible. We're going to talk about this right now. Oh, Reince Priebus sounded a bit feisty. Like, no, you are not going to leave on my watch. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this, Jeff. You can't leave. You're not allowed. Now, interestingly enough, we found out later that the Sessions did offer his resignation, but Priebus had pressured Trump and said, hey, look, you can't accept that resignation. Boy, I bet he feels dumb now because from what we've heard, Donald Trump's not too happy with Sessions after he recused himself in the investigation. But anyway, Priebus also said he didn't support Trump picking a fight over the crowd size at his inauguration, which was smaller than former President Obama's. And that is the thing that bothers Trump to no end. However, Priebus ultimately relented, saying, quote, it wasn't worth going to war over with Trump. Now, to be fair, look, that's a really relatively small issue, I think. It's very petty. Okay, look, you want to believe that your crowd size is bigger than Obama's? Okay. But we all actually know what this is really about. It's actually a proxy for something else. Obviously, his hands are small. Your mind's out of the gutter, guys. So look, Priebus let him have it. Like, okay, whatever, dude. I'm not going to fight you on this. You want to go out and claim that your crowd sizes are bigger, even though there's demonstrable proof, fine, whatever. Okay, you want to send out Kellyanne Conway? You want to send out Sean Spicer? Hey, that's up to you, guy. I'm not going to fight you on this. And Sean Spicer, of course, one of the best quotes on this. This is the biggest crowd size in history, period. Period. Biggest crowd size. What a clown. But again, even though it was an obvious lie, this whole thing is wrapped up in Trump's ego. And Priebus learned very quickly that you can't put a hole in that, right? You can't get through when Trump's ego is involved. Now, Priebus also said, quote, despite all this, I still love the guy. In fact, recently he was in a call, or in touch with him, I should say. And according to a recent article I read, they said that Trump would call Priebus to complain about John Kelly. Now, that's really actually an important issue, an important point. But on Priebus, yeah, of course he's in touch with Donald Trump. Of course he says he still loves him. I absolutely love the guy. He wants another job, of course. Especially now that John Kelly is in a bit of trouble. Ivanka and other current former staffers, they're not happy with John Kelly. They got the knives out for him, especially since he blocked access to the president. Now, if you're Ivanka Trump, you do not like having your access blocked to daddy. And of course, you have the Rob Porter story, which is actually the perfect chance that they were looking for to eliminate John Kelly. If John Kelly knew that Rob Porter was a wife beater and still like, don't care, I'm still going to elevate him to this position, well, obviously, that would be good grounds to eliminate him. And if he goes, chaos returns, chaos reigns, and we don't know what's actually going on. So, and that is actually really important when it comes to policy, because, again, you don't know what's going to happen in a White House that is unstructured. Or we're going to end up launching a nuke on North Korea. I don't know. I hope not. I mean, there are some reports that John Kelly and General Mattis are pretty much the only ones that are preventing something terrible from happening, preventing him from making rash decisions such as that. So, man, if it's 50 times worse than what we thought it was before John Kelly, it's going to be very interesting to see what it's going to be like if John Kelly is out. Oh boy. All right. So I'm going to take a quick break here. So we'll be back. We got more stories, so stay right here. Hey there. Around the Nation. We'll be right back. Everybody, back around the nation here. More stories here, but before I get into it, make sure, if you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Definitely appreciate it. All right. Also, thank the patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. thank you guys for watching and supporting, and most importantly, supporting the show. So supporting independent progressive media. All right, so let's get into Maine. I don't know, it might have sounded a little dirty. Okay. It's an interesting story here. All right. Voters in Maine are continuing the fight to change their electoral system. Now, Vox is reporting that supporters of ranked choice voting delivered more than 80,000 signatures on behalf of a statewide referendum, well over the 61,000 they needed to get the measure on the ballot. Now, that means that Maine residents now have the opportunity to vote in June whether or not they want to enact ranked choice voting. Now, for those of you who are a bit unfamiliar about how this works, here's a little bit of a brief explanation. Basically, under ranked choice voting, voters would be able to rank multiple candidates in order of preference. So what it was is that how it would work is that you would have multi-round instant runoff elections. Now, in the first round, for example, first choice voters first choices are all tallied. If one candidate gets the majority of votes, well, they end up winning the election. You don't need a second round because that one person's got the majority. Okay. Now, what makes it different than the rest of the elections, the way that we normally run elections, is that if nobody has a majority, if it's not clear, then the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated. Votes that were cast for the eliminated candidate go to the voter's second choice. The process continues until, of course, you get the process of elimination, and a candidate receives a majority of votes and wins. So this is different because it's not a winner-take-all system. So Maine voters, they decided, we want to put this on the ballot. But wait a minute, didn't they already put this on the ballot? Didn't this already happen? Well, it turns out, yes, back in 2016, Maine voters put this on the ballot, and they actually passed it. So Maine voters should already be using a ranked choice voting system. Except, of course, the Republican governor, Paul LePage, decided that I don't like this system. I should like the old way because the old way I actually won. So yeah, I want to keep it the same. Now, an explanation of that, of course, is that look, he had twice won. He had been elected without a majority of statewide votes. So what happened is you had some, I guess, a spoiler in there. That ended up giving him the majority, where he actually won. So because his system would hurt him, would also hurt Republican candidates, they, of course, pushed back. They decided, no, we're going to get rid of this. We're not going to enact this at all. And look, if you voted for this, sad day for you. I'm going to overturn the will of the people because we can do that. In fact, Republicans, and they did it in two different ways. For one, they appealed to the Maine Supreme Court. Now, they issued an advisory opinion saying that ranked choice voting violated the state constitution for statewide general elections. Now, they did say that it was okay for state primary and federal elections. They said that it's not, that you can't apply it to statewide general elections. Okay. Now, the case also rested on how to interpret the provision in the state constitution, saying that the state general elections would be decided by a plurality of all votes. Now, that wasn't the only way that they tried to shut this down. State Republicans also proposed delaying even the partial implementation of this until 2021. And then they passed that law in late October of 2017 with the help of some Democrats who also feel threatened by this system. Now, the legislation also said that if ranked choice voting supporters couldn't amend the state constitution, which is a pretty damn high bar, to unequivocally allow for ranked choice voting, then the referendum would be repealed fully by 2022. So, look, this reaction shows how scared they actually are of this system. Look, ranked choice voting is probably the best way to help eliminate the two-party dichotomy. And because it would actually give independents the ability to run these elections without being considered a spoiler. So this is great. Because, again, let's take 2016 as an example, right? So, look, some of you voted for Jill Stein, right? Now, Jill Stein, you guys know the rhetoric on her. Or maybe you voted for Rocky Anderson, maybe you voted for somebody else, and that's fine. Those people were considered spoilers. I mean, you had mainstream media, for example, saying, oh, spoiler, get out of the race, get out of the race. You're ruining it. You're going to end up ruining it for our candidate. Well, under ranked choice voting, you wouldn't have that because there wouldn't be such a thing as a spoiler. If they don't get enough votes, they're eliminated and your vote goes to your second choice or your third choice or your fourth choice, whatever. That's awesome because that means that this opens it up for independents or third-party candidates. Now, that also means that you're going to have some competition for votes now that it's opened it up and he's given you more choices. So look, that's why I do support ranked choice voting. And that's also why the people in power absolutely hate it. Now, despite Republicans and some Democrats' efforts to block this, the people of Maine have decided, no, we're going to keep pushing for this. And they have a very interesting tool that allows them to do so. It's called, appropriately, the people's veto. How fucking cool is that? So what this does, the people's veto, is that it allows citizens who are unhappy with an enacted state law to put that law up for a statewide vote. If the people reject it, the law is repealed. Mainers have only held 30 such votes since 1910, and never before had they voted on a law which the state legislature repealed a statewide referendum. They will have that opportunity to do so in June. So that makes it a very important election. So I want you to look at the dynamics here of this, right? So, and this is why this is shaping up to be a pretty important race or election. This passed with the majority of Mainers saying, yes, I want more choices in election rather than just Democrats and Republicans. I don't want to just vote for Democrats and Republicans. Now, lawmakers, they looked at that and they said, yeah, that's great. And then they decided to rip it up. And then they laughed in your face. They took a victory lap. And do you think the people in Maine are going to let that stand? If you're in Maine, are you going to let that stand? Hell no. In June, they actually get a chance to make their voices heard again. So this vote has very important implications. For one, this is a direct rebuke of the two-party system. People are tired of having to choose between a Democrat and Republican, or a Republican and Republican light, in many different cases. Now they might actually have independents, even progressives, people from the Working Families Party, for example. They could now run in these elections, and they don't have to be considered a spoiler. They can't use that, but he's a spoiler. You've got to vote for the Democrat or else you're going to get the Republican. It's going to be so much worse. You won't have that anymore. And look, this is important because 46% of Americans identify as independents. They don't identify with any political party. And guess who the most popular politician in America is? Bernie Sanders. And as Peter Dow and the rest of centrist Twitter love to point out, he's not a Democrat. He's an independent. He's actually the longest serving independent in Congress. And, oh, look, as well as identifying with most Americans on being an independent, he also identifies with the majority of Americans on most of the issues. No wonder both parties see him and independents and ranked choice voting as a threat. This is a direct challenge to the broken two-party system. You tired of voting for the lesser of two evils? Ranked choice voting is a way to end that. No, look, you will no longer have that spoiler in the race. And finally, did you know that 61% of Americans, according to a new Gallup poll, feel that both parties do not do an adequate job of representing the people? That's because they represent their donors. Oftentimes, you have no real choice. This will at least allow you to have a choice. So I think this vote in Maine is actually important because, look, if an entire state can do ranked choice voting and give people a choice, it might actually spur the rest of the nation into fighting for it too. And I'm not saying it's the only solution. Of course, we need open primaries. We need to get the money out of politics. That's a major one. And, we need to open up, automatic voter registration and everything like that. But this is just one of the ways I think will absolutely help to transform our system away from what we've had already. Because again, we're the only system in the developed world that relies on a two-party system. Everyone else is a bit more parliamentary. And they might have their problems, but we also have major problems. So we got to do something, and I think this would be an excellent start. Okay. I'm not sure which one to do next. Again, they're both really good stories. So, let's go to the TV station. A Seattle TV station just did something really amazing for some of its viewers. Now, it's being reported in Pointer that the TV station, it's a Seattle TV station, KIRO, bought $1 million worth of medical debt and forgave it for people in its coverage area. Now, they spent about $12,000 for $1 million worth of medical debt and forgave it for about 1,000 viewers. So this is great. Now, the move comes after KIRO's Jesse Jones reported about a woman who had cancer and was struggling to pay her medical bills. She needed treatment to survive, but was unable to afford that treatment. Now, they did that story, and of course, it's an absolutely heartbreaking story. We shouldn't be doing these things in America. It's barbaric how we treat people who are sick and can't afford medication. Amazing, right? Now, the way that this worked is that they bought, as I said, they bought this debt that was sold to a collection agency. Now, that debt is sold for about 1 cent on each dollar. So you can buy up large amounts of debt and forgive it for actually a small amount of money. And of course, that's how debt collectors also screw you, because they buy the debt for a very low price. And then they say, here, you can give me, say you owe $20,000, give me $15,000. Well, they still made a huge amount of profit off that, off buying off your debt. Now, I happen to think that nobody should have medical debt in the first place, but I'll get to that in a minute. Now, the station apparently worked with a charity called RIP Medical Debt, which locates, buys, and forgives medical debt across America. Now, Jones told Pointer that he is a cancer survivor himself. Now, he said, quote, I do well in my job, and I've been on payment plans to pay my medical bills. When you have $200,000 in medical bills, even with insurance, you're in the hook for some of that. He said, I started thinking about my story and the stories of the people I see at the cancer center who I talk to every day. I said, let's talk about the people who have issues, big issues, with the bills that have forced them into bankruptcy, forcing them to make choices about whether to get treatment. Now, again, here we have a system where people look in their wallet, they look in their bank accounts, and they go, oh my God, I've got this terrible disease that's literally killing me, but can I actually afford to get treatment? How is that even a choice? But unfortunately, we live in a country where people literally can't afford to get sick. In no other country does anybody with cancer have to struggle to pay off bills. Look, having cancer is hard enough, okay? I have family that have survived cancer, and luckily, they actually had great insurance and actually could afford it. But not everybody's so lucky. That person who had cancer, by the way, they should be focused on recovering and getting back to life, not worrying about paying off their debt. Horrific, right? But like I said, this station did do a wonderful thing, but that's not necessarily the takeaway that I want to have from this. Because really, stuff like this, which is the best of intentions and is wonderful from people who actually, get together and do this, but it really points out the massive failure in our own system and the fact that we fail all the time at taking care of our own people. So what do we do about it? Medicare. Just open it up already. We've got to change the system. In no other country in the world do we do this to our own people. This is a sick system. Ironic, right? And we want change. We want real change. We can no longer abide by this for-profit system that sucks people dry just for being sick. Healthcare is a human right. Let's get on with the rest of the developed world and have Medicare for all. Okay. Finally, one more story for you guys. Have you heard the good news? Well, I'm about to give you the good news. All right. There's a new study out that shows that people who smoke marijuana actually do not end up having brain damage, as some people claim. Now, this new study from researchers at the University of Colorado Boulder, which is, of course, it's legal in Colorado, they found that marijuana is actually far less damaging to the brain than alcohol is. Very interesting. Now, the study, which was published in the journal Addiction, also suggests that weed use does not alter the structure of a person's brain. So this is absolutely fascinating. Now, this study was done by Ken Hutchinson. At least he was a co-author of this study. And he was talking to Medical News Today, and he thought, okay, look, there's all these stereotypes about people losing brain cells and getting, foggy memory and things like that after smoking marijuana. Again, stereotypes, right? So he's like, I want to look at the long-term effect, okay? I want to look at what effect smoking marijuana has on a person's brain, because, look, we don't have conclusive answers to those questions. And he gives a couple of studies. He says, when you look at the studies going back years, you'll see that one study will report marijuana use is related to a reduction in the volume of the hippocampus. The next study then comes around, and then they say that marijuana use is related to changes in the cerebellum. The point is that there's no consistency across all these studies in terms of the actual brain structures. So now that's important, because we've actually, in America, put a moratorium on the study, since it is a Schedule I drug federally. It means that we can actually use it for a lot of research, at least in the federal level. So if we can't look into how it impacts people's brains, then we can't necessarily come back with actual information on what it does, on the effects of it. Now, as I said, he references some studies that were done, but it's important to note that some studies are often funded by, you want to make a guess here, anti-marijuana groups, and of course, the alcohol lobby, which, again, is really important to this, because alcohol is one of the biggest losers in places where marijuana has been legalized. In fact, they're losing a lot of sales as people are switching over to cannabis, which is actually, again, much less harmful. Now, speaking of alcohol, as I said before, for the study, the researchers wanted to see the relationship between alcohol and marijuana use and the volume of gray and white matter in a person's brain. Both gray and white matter are very important for a healthy and functional brain. Now, it was found that among those who drank alcohol, this is adults, and to a lesser extent teens, had a reduction in gray matter volume. Now, the study found that white matter was affected in adults, but not teenagers who drank. These effects were especially seen in adults with a history of drinking for years. So this is all according to Medical News Today. So look, I don't think it's a surprise that drinking is not good for your brain, especially if you have a drinking habit. That makes all the sense in the world, right? So now they looked at marijuana users. Now, these are people that are defined as those who smoked in the past 30 days. In marijuana users, there was no relationship between smoking marijuana and the structure of their brain. No changes. No changes in gray matter, no changes in white matter. It stayed the same. Interesting. So, look, that means adults, and this is important, adults who use marijuana are actually better off when it comes to their brain than people who drink. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no negative effects of cannabis. Well, I think, like everything, moderation is key. So, for example, you can't go out there, you just can't sit there and chain smoke joints all day. No, that's going to be bad for you, right? That's not going to end up well. At the very least, you're not going to be very productive, and you're going to be very, very hungry. So, no, everything in moderation, of course, right? And also, for the most part, you want to keep that stuff away from minors. Now, that is unless, of course, you have like cannabis oils that are good for things like seizures and stuff like that. Well, that's a different story. I'm talking more recreational, right? And so people who drink recreationally and people who smoke recreationally, there's a difference between those people's brains. And of course, the people who drink more obviously have more issues with their brains, more changes with their brains than people who smoke marijuana. So, again, this kind of flies in the face of marijuana being absolutely horrible and dangerous. Basically shows that it's nothing more than fear-mongering propaganda. And look, we've known that. We've known that since the Schaefer memo, right? Schaefer memo, Nixon threw it out. He's like, no. You understand, I want to use marijuana to go after my political enemies. Who are my political enemies? Black people, Latinos, and liberals. People who generally smoke marijuana. Well, I'm going to go after them. I'm going to call them degenerates. We're going to launch this war on drugs. And I'm going to get after my political enemies. This is back when progressives were actually strong. And Nixon's like, we got to take the legs out from under them. I know, let's launch a war on drugs. And it's actually been incredibly effective. So, but here we have more evidence that marijuana is actually not as bad as alcohol and not as bad as people say. So, legalize it already. Legalize it, regulate it, tax it, man. We don't need another war on drugs, Jeff Sessions. We're not interested in your war on drugs. Okay? Take your reefer madness and go back to the 50s, man. We've had enough of your goddamn drug war. No, it's time to legalize it. It's time to regulate it. It's time to tax it. It's time that we end this bullshit war on drugs. And let's let people smoke their pot, man. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Like I said, it was tried to have a couple of fun, good news stories, lighter stuff, since it's been pretty heavy all week. So again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in here. We're not here tomorrow or Monday, so we'll be back on Tuesday. So make sure to tune in. That's on Tuesday, 3 p.m. right here, 3 p.m. Eastern, I should say. Noon Pacific, TYT Nation. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Oh, yeah. By the way, we just hit 70,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much. You're all amazing. Thank you for letting me hit that number. 100,000 we go. 100,000 we go. So we're moving up. We're moving up. So thank you to everybody who's subscribed. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel, and you'll see lots more great content. So, all right, everybody. Love you guys. You have a great weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation.